Hi guys, today I'm going to talk about 4 things that you can do with your pedal board that will save you time, money, probably embarrassment while you're on the road, you're out gigging as a working musician. So first I want to talk about my board, how I use it, why it's set up the way it is. That will give you some context as to kind of how I've come up with this list. I'm not a big pedal guy, I don't use lots of pedals. I don't stack drives and things like that. Certainly all my drive comes from my amp. I use a modified Marshall. It's a JCM 800. It's been modified to have 2 channels. One is very, very, very clean, and the other is very, very not clean. So there's nothing in the middle. My board is very simple. It doesn't have too much on it. Most of it is kind of modulation and that kind of thing. So let's just get this thing up here and we'll talk about it. So this is my board. It's done a couple of 100 shows. It's definitely been around. It's still in pretty good condition, and I'll go over that a bit later on. As you'll see, the only drive pedal here is this Noble's ODR1. That's a great pedal, and because my clean channel is very, very, very clean, it's nice to have just that little hair again, that edge of breakup, which is where I use that. There's a tuner, a volume pedal, my wireless receiver, chorus, delay, compressor, reverb, and a switcher. And that's pretty much it. If I flip it around, what you'll see is it's reasonably tidy. It's not perfect, I'm not a pedal board expert, but what I did try and do is ensure that you've got no cables that are like hanging loose and dangling, because if there is one thing that is immeasurably important when you're out gigging every night, it's that your stuff is reliable. If you have cables dangling everywhere and bits hanging off your board and stuff, it's just things that can get caught and stuff. You rip a cable, or you damage a pedal, or you'll damage a jack plug. All of that stuff can ruin your gig. So the way that I avoid that is just to have everything pretty self-contained. I also try to make sure that the power cables and instrument cables always cross perpendicular. Just helps keep interference down, that kind of thing. So tip number 1, get yourself one of these. So this is a little patch bay that I got from a company called Bright Onion Effects. They're handmade, made in the UK. They are rock solid, and it's just a patch bay. It's got 5 different coloured jack sockets. I have 5 cables with different coloured plugs on them that correspond to the sockets, and I've got stickers on my amp. So when I get to the gig, I can just get my board out, get the cables out, click, 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 click. Same in the amp. I'm set up, ready to go. I'm not sitting there trying to figure out what cable goes where and running cables across my board, and and then I look at, oh, why have I got any sound? It turns out you're coming out of the expression socket of your delay pedal or something silly. It just makes your setup and your tear down really easy. All your cables are in one place. You can't get it wrong. It definitely saves time. I only use 4 of these right now. This was originally built as a wet dry board, and then I kind of went down to a mono rig because it's wet dry is just double the amps to take with you, so I only use 4 of these rather than 5. Obviously the wireless is on here, so there's no guitar in, but there is out to the amp, there's amp effects send comes into here, effects return goes back out there to the amp, and then you've got a channel switcher. Tip number 2, don't skimp on power. So not all power is created equal. I've been at so many venues, as I'm sure many of you have, where you've got just generally poor quality power. It's not well conditioned, or you've got halogen lights that are sharing the same circuit, and it's noisy and it's fizzy and it causes interference with your amp. If you're using an amp, Helix modeler guys, we'll talk about that another time. And whilst the idea of a completely isolated power supply is a dream for most of us, you can take some steps to try and protect yourself a little bit. And one of those things is to buy the best quality power that you can afford. So one of these is a Voodoo Labs, one of these is a One Spot. They're isolated power supplies. I've got 2 because there's a few pedals on the board, but also I've got quite a lot that are high milliamps. I think there's a few that are 300 milliamps on here, so I couldn't get all of that from one power supply. But yeah, good quality, isolated power. Get it under your board. That gives you a degree of consistency and reliability when it comes to your live setup. All right, number 3, and this is very specific to my use case. As I mentioned at the start, I'm not a big pedal guy. I don't use lots of pedals. I don't change my patches very often. And what I tend to do is use about 4 or 5 tones throughout the course of a show. It's a 3-hour show, so I don't switch a lot. I've got a clean with some chorus, a clean without some chorus. I've got sort of a rhythm, which is sort of dirty channel, roll the volume of my guitar back a little bit, and some reverb. I've got a lead, which is that plus delay, and I've got extra lead, which is that plus obnoxious amounts of delay. And that's it, and I just flip between those all night. I don't like tap dancing, turning pedals on, turning pedals off. I like to keep it really quick, really consistent, because then I can focus on the things that matter. I can focus on my playing, on my performance, not I need to get over here and push this button and turn that delay off, and haven't got to think about it. So every change I make is one tap. Super useful. This isn't an expensive switcher. It's a Hotone Cybery. It's not a huge amount of money, but what I like about it is it does MIDI. And not only does it do MIDI, it does A/B switching on amps as well. So when I tap a preset, that will go to my amp. It will say, right, flick it onto the dirty channel. It will send a MIDI signal to these to turn these on or off, or select a particular preset on my timeline or whatever that might be. So I can dial that in for each of the 5 sounds, and obviously the options there are infinite if you want to add more and more patches. It's isolated loops, so the stuff in the front of the amp, which is just the compressor and the Nobles ODR1, are only in and on when you want them to be, and all the other stuff is just switching switching these from bypass to certain presets. It's really useful. It saves you tap dancing, and it's certainly made my live performance far more accurate, because I can worry about my playing more and what pedals to turn on and off less, but it also means I enjoy the performance a whole lot more. Okay, for the fourth and final one, put this down. Oftentimes, certainly when you're playing multiple runs of shows, you are loading in, sometimes in a hurry, you're loading out, you're certainly loading out in a hurry, back into the van or the bus or whatever it is you're traveling with. Stuff gets thrown around, etc, etc. You're not always the only one loading your gear up. Sometimes you'll have stagehands or I like to think roadies, but I've never had those. People are not really concerned with what belongs to whom. Let's get this in the van. And for that reason, a good quality tour case makes a really big difference. I'm one of those people that won't tour my guitars in soft cases, and I feel exactly the same on pedalboard as well. I've seen too many accidents, too many things get thrown in vans and broken, to use soft cases or no case at all with my pedalboard. So if you can, get yourself a good quality hard case that you can put your board in. It's assembled, it's in one piece, you take it out, you do your 5 clicks, 4 clicks with your patch bay, and you're good to go. So there you go. There are some tips that I've picked up along the way that might help you with your board, especially if you're out gigging a lot. You'll know that time is of the essence, simplicity, reliability are of the essence, and hopefully at least one of these tips will save you some time, save you some effort. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.